The most striking truth about the comfort withdrawal loop is that you don't become bonded to someone because of the pleasure they provide, but because of the specific way they take it away. We generally assume that humans run away from pain and towards safety, right? But in certain high-pressure dynamics, the simple cessation of pain is often used as a biological anchor to keep you trapped. So why? Why does the person who treats you the worst often end up feeling like the only one who can make you feel better? This is the core paradox of this loop. It's the exact moment your own brain's relief reflex gets used to make you tolerate treatment you would normally find completely unacceptable. So how do we unpack that? We're going to walk through this together in 6 parts. We'll start with the relief paradox itself. Then we'll look at how a biological tether gets forged. After that, we'll break down the 3-step cycle that drives this whole thing. We'll get into the psychology of leverage versus attachment, then talk about a really useful tool called the Awareness Audit. And finally, we'll land on something crucial: your right to peace.
All right, first up, the relief paradox. This really gets to the heart of the matter, trying to understand why the end of pain can be so easily misinterpreted by our brains as a powerful, deep form of connection. Now, it's really important to frame this the right way. We're talking about observable patterns here, things people report experiencing. We are not diagnosing anyone's character or trying to guess their intent. We're just exploring a mechanism, a process, where the brain can get nudged into mistaking manufactured relief for a genuine bond. And look, this isn't some flaw in our wiring. It's actually a feature. Our brains are hardwired to seek safety and reward. But that very same survival instinct, it can be turned against us when the reward we're chasing isn't real pleasure, but just the absence of pain that someone else created. So how does this foundation get built? Well, that brings us to forging a biological tether. This is the setup, It's the groundwork that makes the whole loop possible. This is where dependency starts to take root, often way before we even consciously realize something's off. The engine driving this isn't some kind of magic trick. It's a well-documented principle from behavioral science called intermittent reinforcement. If you've ever seen someone glued to a slot machine, you've seen this in action. You pull the lever, but you have no idea when or if you'll get a reward. It's that unpredictability, that constant feeling of maybe this time, that creates a compulsion to keep trying. See, our brains actually get a bigger dopamine hit from a surprise reward than a predictable one. And in relationships, this means that unpredictable affection can become way more addictive than steady, reliable kindness. So this intermittent reinforcement, it sets up 2 really powerful belief patterns. First, there's the relief trap. This is that moment you feel this huge wave of gratitude when someone just stops being cold or critical. Think about that. You're not celebrating kindness, you're celebrating the end of hostility. The second one is even more insidious: biological tethering. See, our ability to calm ourselves down, to self-soothe, is a skill. But over time, this cycle can wear that skill down, making you feel like only one person on Earth holds the key to your own calm. You've effectively outsourced your emotional regulation.
And this is where it gets really dangerous. This isn't just about someone being moody or unpredictable. This is about a systematic process that calibrates one person's biology to fit another person's agenda. Your internal baseline for what feels normal or good starts to shift. Peace is no longer your default setting. Instead, this tense, vigilant state becomes the new normal. And those brief moments of comfort, they start to feel like this extraordinary gift, instead of what they should be, the absolute bare minimum.
So here's the bottom line. That comfort you feel, it's not a gift. It's the bait on a hook. Over time, people caught in this dynamic often report what's called a self-diminishing effect. They get so focused on managing the other person's mood to avoid that next awful withdrawal that they completely lose sight of their own needs. They start walking on eggshells, censoring what they say, and basically shrinking their own lives just to keep this fragile peace. In effect, they become their own jailer. Okay, so that's the setup. Now let's look at the mechanism itself, the 3-step cycle. This is the observable pattern, the engine that keeps this whole loop running. This pattern almost always follows a really clear 3-stage cycle. It kicks off with what we call comfort satiation, then it's followed by a sudden withdrawal, and it all culminates in something called the relief hit. Let's break each one of these down.
Step 1, comfort satiation. Now, this isn't just about someone being nice. We're often talking about an intense, almost overwhelming level of attention and validation. You might have heard it called love bombing. What it does is establish this baseline of incredibly high security and connection. This person becomes your safe haven, right? The one person who really gets you. And that intensity is so important because it's what makes the next step, the withdrawal, feel absolutely catastrophic.
And then comes step 2, the sudden withdrawal. Out of nowhere, for no clear reason, all that warmth just vanishes. The person becomes distant, critical, maybe gives you the silent treatment. This sudden shift triggers a massive stress response in your brain and your body. Cortisol, the stress hormone, just floods your system. And this isn't just a feeling, it's a biological state of alarm. Your brain is practically screaming, "Threat detected, find the problem and fix it now." And you're left scrambling, replaying every conversation, trying to solve a puzzle that you didn't even know you were playing.
And right here, this is where the trap just slams shut. Step 3, the relief hit. When the controller finally decides to give you that comfort again, your brain gets a massive flood of neurochemicals. It isn't just happiness, it's this profound, deep sense of relief as all that cortisol drains away and you get this huge spike of dopamine, the reward chemical. And that dopamine hit is rewarding the end of the pain. The relief feels so intense, so euphoric, that it reinforces the idea that this person is the source of all your good feelings, completely blinding you to the fact that they were also the source of all the stress in the first place.
When you repeat this 3-step cycle from stress hormone cortisol to reward chemical dopamine over and over again, it leads to something called neurochemical anchoring. Your brain literally gets conditioned. It learns a destructive formula. This person equals pain, but, and this is the important part, this person is also the only antidote to that pain. Your own biology starts to scream that this person is your salvation, when in reality, they're the source of the storm.
So that brings us to the psychology humming beneath the surface here. Leverage versus attachment. What are the motivations and the vulnerabilities that really power this dynamic?
What you see here is often a really stark imbalance. The controller, whether they know it or not, is seeking leverage. By becoming the one and only person who can regulate your emotional state, they kind of get immunity from accountability. How can you set a boundary? It becomes terrifying because you know it could just trigger another one of those agonizing withdrawals. And on the other side of the equation is a very deep, very human need for attachment. The target of this behavior can become conditioned to mistake the intensity of the relief for the quality of the connection. Those dramatic highs feel like passion, not a symptom of a deeply unstable system.
This powerful pull can be explained by a concept called incentive salience. It's this weird quirk in our brain's reward system where the wanting part gets disconnected from the liking part. You might not even like the relationship anymore. You might feel drained, unhappy, and just tired all the time. But that biological drive, that intense wanting for the next hit of relief, can become an all-consuming obsession. It's the force that keeps pulling you back in, even when your logical brain is telling you it's a terrible idea.
And here it is. This is probably the single most telling sign that the loop has really taken hold. Your internal monologue, it shifts. You stop asking the self-protective question, is this person good for me? And you start asking the survival-based question, what can I do to keep them happy and stop the next withdrawal? Your entire focus shifts from your own well-being to managing the emotional state of someone else. And this often happens so gradually, you don't even notice it's happening.
So, okay, understanding the trap is one thing, but how do you even begin to find your way out of it? That brings us to the awareness audit, some tools you can use to start reclaiming your biological sovereignty.
So that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How in the world do you break a cycle that's so deeply rooted in your own brain chemistry? Well, the answer doesn't start with confronting them or trying to change them. It starts with awareness. It starts with you.
There are 2 really powerful internal tools that can help you build that awareness. First, the relief audit. The next time a tense period ends and things feel good again, just pause. Ask yourself, am I feeling genuinely happy and at peace right now, or am I just relieved that the anxiety is finally gone? See, happiness is expansive. Relief is the feeling of a heavy weight being lifted. Learning to tell the difference is a radical act. Second is something called biological decoupling. When you feel a withdrawal starting, just try to observe your internal state. Notice the anxiety, the racing heart, the overwhelming urge to fix it. Just notice it. Treat it like data and see the pattern without immediately reacting to it.
And this, right here, might be the most empowering realization of all. That frantic, desperate feeling you get during a withdrawal, that is not a reflection of your character. It is not a sign that you're weak or unworthy. It is a predictable biological response to an intermittent reward system. It's just cortisol. It's your brain seeking dopamine. Understanding this simple fact decouples your self-worth from the cycle. It's not about you, it's about the mechanism. And that knowledge, that alone, is an incredibly powerful shield.
And all of this brings us to our final and maybe most important idea. your right to peace. This is the ultimate takeaway from understanding this entire dynamic.
If you only take one single thing away from this explainer, please let it be this. Relief is the calling card of a cycle, not a sign of a healthy connection. Truly healthy connections are built on a foundation of peace, of consistency, of respect. They don't require you to go through hell just to earn a moment of comfort. The constant presence of intense relief should be a massive red flag, a signal to look much, much closer at the price you're paying for it.
And so we'll end here. You do not have to earn the right to exist in a state of peace. Your mind, your internal world, that is your own sovereign territory. Peace of mind should never be a prize that you have to win back from the very person who took it away. It is your baseline, it is your right.